Welcome back to another episode of The Hip. My name is James Layton, CEO and founder of Anderson James. This is the podcast where every single week I bring you a leader from our sector to discuss some of the biggest challenges in UK housing today. Today I was delighted to be joined by Andrew Shepherd, Managing Director of TopHat. TopHat are one of the leading MMC businesses in the UK. I talked to Andrew at length about the benefits of MMC, how he feels technology can play a role in the productivity of our factories in the UK, how they're launching a new facility in 2024, which is due to be Europe's largest facility, and the future of MMC in Andrew's eyes and how he thinks that the industry will evolve in the future. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
As I always like to start, as common practice, could you mind just give us an introduction to yourself, just a little bit of a high-level introduction to you as a person?
Yeah, so thank you, James. Andrew Shepherd, Managing Director at TopHat. My specific remit within TopHat is our turnkey construction business, so working with our customers, delivering our projects on a day-to-day basis, engaging with those customers and making sure that they get the projects that they are anticipating.
Nice, lovely. And just to go back a little bit, how did you get here? So what was the sort of journey through your leadership and your career? Where did it start? And I suppose just give us a bit of a synopsis of how it transitioned.
So it started a long time back at school. So I wanted to go to Loughborough University, wanted to go and do sport. I didn't want to do sport at university, so I looked at degrees, and commercial management and quantity surveying sounded like an interesting degree. What little I knew. But I spent 4 years at Loughborough, absolutely loved my degree, loved what I learned about the construction industry, and really enjoyed the variety and the different aspects of what was involved in construction. On leaving university, I actually then went to work for KPMG for 3 years in a day, training as an accountant. And it'd be fair to say I found it 3 challenging years, but I got my certificate, my chartered accountancy, and then I left the next day, it would be fair to say, and then came back to construction. So since then, I've been working in the construction industry in various roles, spent a long period of time working for Laing O'Rourke, internationally, working here in the UK, Canada, Middle East, Australia, and having an amazing time being at the forefront of MMC, being at the forefront of offsite. I left there to go and set up a business that was just an MMC contractor, ran that for 6 years, exited that business back in 2020 to join TopHat here to try and do the same thing again.
Amazing. And a little bit to unpack there, I think the first thing would be Laing O'Rourke seemed to deliver some really great leaders in our industry. What did they do well, would you say? Because I'm always thinking that there's some brilliant people out there that were started at Laing O'Rourke.
I feel privileged and lucky to have worked at that. And part of that experience is the breadth of what they do. They are not just a one-size-fits-all kind of contractor. They have a huge amount of breadth in what they deliver. From ultra, I was sat there at many occasions. We were delivering ultra prime residential schemes like One Hyde Park, and I'd go from that site one day to an affordable housing scheme in Barking, where we're delivering affordable housing that was, ultra low carbon, really sustainable for those that can at least afford, high bills. And it was that breadth of experience: hospitals, infrastructure, the Olympics, nuclear power plants, working overseas. It's all of those different things that give you that breadth of understanding. And I felt really lucky to have those opportunities to go and work in Australia and Canada and find out different ways that different countries operate. Because they're very different. There's lots to learn. There's lots of good stuff to take from here, but there's actually lots to learn from different areas as well. So I think it's that is given to people at Laing O'Rourke, where you've got that breadth. And it is that excellent training that sits within Laing O'Rourke as well.
Yeah. What would you say the main differences have been since you started in your career to today? Like, what are the absolute key things that you think have happened in that period? Because there's a lot gone on, and with modular and what we'll come on to talk about is different ways to construct. But what are the other main themes that you've seen over the years?
So look, for me, it's been two key drivers. I mean, number one is we now talk about sustainability. And we mean it when we talk about it. It's something that's really, excited me for probably the last 10 years of my career. How can we embed sustainability in there? As my kids have got older, actually, it becomes even more important because you want to leave the right legacy for your kids. So that's one area. The second area is productivity. When I joined the industry, there were more people working in the industry than there are now. And that's a shocking statement, because actually what's happened over that period is the population's increased, yet the number of people working in construction's decreased. And the costs have gone up, productivity's gone down. And we know, and it is well documented, that productivity in construction is a massive issue. And there are loads of different reasons for that. So actually looking at how can we improve productivity, how can we do more with less? And that's become a real conversation too. And actually, I think when you talk about sustainability, when you talk about doing more with less, they are both the same thing. Sustainability is not just being green, it's about being sustainable practices, sustainable behaviours, sustainable approach to delivery of construction.
Yeah, and I've been in the industry 12, 14 years, and even I think it's now more pertinent than it ever has been before. But also, not only that, I think actually people really care now, whereas it used to be something to put on your brochure to say we're sustainable as a business. I think people actually really care now. So that's really good. Just going on to TopHat, because I mean, that's going to be the main bulk of the podcast, is give us an overview now, a helicopter view of TopHat as we sit here today.
Okay, so TopHat is a modular housing provider. We provide houses and apartments across the UK. We've got a number of sites that are currently live. We've got a number of projects delivered, and we've got a fantastic pipeline of projects coming up. We're probably somewhere between 250, 300 people in the business today. And as has been relatively well documented, we're currently building our second factory. This is a game-changing statement from TopHat. So we are going from being, an organisation capable of delivering about 800 homes a year from our current factory, and we're delivering a new factory that we're capable of delivering about 4,000 homes a year. So that is a vast uptick in what we're doing. We've learned a lot from the first factory, and there's been a real opportunity for us as a business to test, to improve, to refine, to embed that continuous improvement that you should get from modular manufacturing into our processes, and then to go out and say, right, now's the time to go and build a new factory when we've got the pipeline, we've got the demand, we've got the confidence that what's coming down in the next 2-3 years is going to be there to fill a factory. So that's been the real uptick and change in what we're doing as an organisation.
Yeah, and when you got on board, so just for the benefit of the listeners, when did TopHat start as a business, or when did it incorporate?
So it incorporated back in 2016, and originally started to look at things as a developer. And then it quickly changed to, we want to be a modular housing manufacturer. And in 2019, the company was mostly acquired by Goldman Sachs. Mm-hmm. I joined the business in 2020. So I've been here for sort of coming up 2.5, 3 years. And, the business has changed beyond belief over that period of time.
And it was my next question, but what have been some of the big changes you've seen in that 2 or 3 year period? Because you've had a lot of growth. So what's been the big change?
I think one is we've embedded a lot of learning into the organisation. It's trying to become an organisation with a learning culture where you understand what you've done, you monitor what you've done, you check what you've done, and then you embed that learning back into what you're doing the next time around. I think that's hugely important. We've also been able to refine our product, become more efficient, become more sustainable, and all of that's gone into the learning with the new factory. What's also changed over that time, and I'd say over the last 18 months, sustainability has become the first conversation I have with people. For 20 odd years prior to that, it was always cost. How much is it going to cost me? Actually now, can you do net zero carbon? What can we do in terms of getting the bills down for residents? What can we do about ensuring that these aren't creating lots of emissions in construction or in operations? That's become a real driver for people. And that's a great conversation to have when you've got a product that's as sustainable as ours. Yeah,
well, and it's great that the narrative's moved on, because, I was getting bored of 2018 flat pack houses, prefab, this, blah, 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 they'll never last. I think we've moved on from that. I think the narrative's now moved to, wow, these could be really game-changing for our net zero agenda, etc. What you talked about investment then, how important is that in the marketplace? Because the beautiful thing about MMC for me is that we're all in it together. That's the one thing I'd say. Everyone wants everyone else to succeed, and we all want to learn from each other. But how important is that investment to keep coming, to keep us innovating and developing our culture within it?
It's absolutely critical. It is at the bedrock of making sure that what is delivered is to standards, to the quality expected by our customers. So to set up an MMC, and there's lots of different scales. So you've got, and this is great because the market is evolving. You've got some big players at the top of the market that are capable of churning out 1,000+ houses. You've got some mid-tier players, and you've got some smaller players. And that's what you want in a mature market. You want different players that provide a different solution to different questions, to different challenges. And that's great. At the top end of the market, where we sit in terms of scale, what you really, really need is that investment. Because what you are trying to do is you're trying to address productivity, you are trying to address quality, and you're trying to deliver something that delivers great outcomes, sustainability, fire, efficiency. And that takes a huge upfront investment. So as an organization, we've invested in a huge factory, we're investing in another huge factory. That's a significant cost. Let's not underplay that. You're also then developing technology to drive that. So again, technology costs money to develop. You're then developing designs and solutions that customers want. Those designs and solutions then have to be tested. So we send things off to be fire tested, and we build prototype houses. We do all of those things that cost a huge amount of cash. And all of that's before you've got a single penny in from selling a product. So there is a huge upfront cost in terms of it. And it's really important that investment is there, because once that investment is there and people can see that investment, actually what it does is it gives people confidence, because the next thing you're asking for is the market needs confidence to buy your product. There's the saying in IT that no one ever got fired for choosing IBM. Great. It's very similar when you look at construction. No one ever got fired for choosing Lang & Rourke. But when you're a new company, a new organization developing what is perceived to be a new product, that takes courage. And it takes a lot more courage than appointing an established contractor to build traditionally built houses. So it takes leadership, it takes courage and confidence. And all of those things can actually in part come from, well, someone's put £100 million into them. That gives me a little bit more confidence and is part of that answer.
Yeah, and the investment thing's interesting, isn't it? Because there's quicker return on money than there is in some of these things. But you've got to have motivated investors that don't think that they're in it for the short-term quick return. It's a journey, isn't it? We're all going on, definitely.
Yeah, and the money's changed as well. Recently in the European Union, there's various things like the EU taxonomy regulations, sustainable financial disclosure regulations. All of these things have come into play. And there's the panacea of this is Category 9 funds. So these are the most ESG sustainable funds out there. And that is the cheapest money in the market. So pensions are now looking to be demonstratively into these Article 9, Category 9 funds. So there is a market of money chasing sustainable products and sustainable investment. And actually, there's not as much out there for them to invest in. So that money is looking for a home. So when it comes to our customers, when it comes to institutional investors, they're looking to do build to rent. This is a great home. If you're delivering affordable housing that's sustainable, that's not costing the earth, this money is now driving into that sphere. So delivering sustainable ESG compliant products is a great place to be today.
Yeah, and it solves two problems, right? It solves sustainability potentially, and it solves housing as a crisis. So there's two.
Got fuel poverty, creates jobs. I mean, when you try and look at any government agenda, pick a political party at your will. They want to deliver sustainable homes. They want to reduce bills. They want to reduce homelessness. All of these things can be driven by, in part, modular housing.
Yeah, I agree. And just talking about the lessons, you said it a couple of times, is putting all those learnings, all those lessons into the next factory. If you could speak to the 2020 version of yourself, what would be some of the things you'd tell yourself to not do, or some of the things to do quicker?
Look, there's a number of different things. I always find that you're going to find problems in any business, any organization. There's always challenges. Actually, I think the key thing is creating an environment where those challenges bubble up very quickly, not where they're suppressed. Because what I always want to know is that we've got a problem and then we're dealing with it. Because a problem dealt with and resolved quickly is a problem that isn't repeated and actually doesn't blow up in terms of cost.
Totally agree.
So, I'm always keen to try and embed that into any organisation I work at, in the way I behave, in the way that others behave, and make sure that that's understood. So that's one area. I think actually spending more time with our customers, trying to help them understand what the benefits are of what we do. I've now got to the point where it's an open door policy on the factory. If you want to come to the factory, come to the factory. We'll try and fit you in. There's no great secret there. We need people to come and understand. We've had investment houses, insurers, bankers, lawyers, housing associations, people that are customers, people that aren't customers, people will never be customers. But the key thing is actually that awareness is absolutely critical because there's so many different stakeholders. We all live in a house. We're all stakeholders. So it's really important that people have that knowledge and that understanding of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that strikes me on your journey or what will come on your journey is how important it's been for you to build the right team. You talk about this open transparency, but obviously, 100 people, you might be able to put your arms around the culture a little bit and make it tick. But how have you built a good leadership team? And secondly, how have you give them the autonomy to go and deliver what you want them to deliver? Because when you get to 1,000 people, you're not going to be able to be in every detail of everything, are you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always thought is starting at the front end of the business is very different to working in a large beast. As I mentioned, I've worked in big organisations in the past, and trying to persuade 15,000 people to think differently is an incredibly difficult process. Yeah. I mean, change management is one of the hardest things people can do because you're trying to persuade people with ingrained muscle memory, and muscle memory is a horrific thing in any industry because people are so used to doing things in a certain way that they become part of that problem. So trying to persuade big organizations to do things differently is really important. It's actually, when you start an organization, embedding that in at the start is absolutely crucial. Having the right behaviors from day one, setting up the processes, acting in a certain way, being that person, and actually growing the business on that is much easier. If someone asked me how to do it in a large organization, I'd say, good luck. It's really, really, really difficult. It is a bit of a luxury doing it in a smaller organization because you can, as you say, put your arms around 10, 20 people, much harder to put your arms around 100, 200 people, and then even more difficult as you get larger.
Yeah, and I suppose in MMC, it's a recipe, right? You've got the right recipe, now add more water, and you can constantly add more people and more people and more people.
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate. I mean, we have a brilliant product. A lot of effort has gone in from a design perspective, from a product perspective. We're on our 4th iteration of our product, and it's a really, really good product that people want. So the fundamentals of what we do, great. Actually, now you start to say, well, what's the best way to deliver it? What's the best way to engage with our customers? What's the best way to enact and realise that opportunity? And that's part of that journey we're going.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I wanted to go on to the product, but the first thing I wanted to just talk about the benefits of MMC, because if I go back to conversations I was having with chief executives of housing associations in 2016, they were very much, let's suck it and see, we'll see what happens in 10 years' time. I think there's a real shift in A, demand, but B, in the want for the product now. So that's brilliant. There's still a portion of people that say the same things they've always said, and they're still in the camp of traditional's better, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just spend a minute to talk about the benefits. As far as you can see them, what are the big benefits we get from delivering homes in this way rather than traditional?
Well, I'll go back a year ago, and I was speaking to someone about a year ago, and I sort of said, look, we're coming up to a perfect storm. This was spring last year. Gas prices have suddenly left because of the invasion in Ukraine. Interest rates were going up. Inflation was going up. We were staring headlong into a recession that will inevitably hit us this year, which will result in fewer houses being built. So we've got a perfect storm, a real perfect storm. And actually, each of those challenges and each of those issues can be addressed by MMC, is the reality. So, let's take each in turn. So you've got a challenge whereby you are sat there saying bills are going up. Everyone's seen it, your energy bills going up. Well, if you deliver a home that requires less energy, doesn't use gas, only uses electricity, actually, your bills will not be going up nearly as much. So firstly, we're addressing the fuel challenge by using, we're not using gas, we're not putting pressure on the gas network. We've got fantastic improvement in terms of the decarbonisation of the grid, net zero. I was looking at National Grid, I think, said one day back end of last year, 82% of the power generated in the UK was net zero carbon. What a great place to be. And that's only getting better. That is only getting
absolutely.
better. So let's assume that continues to improve. Actually, in 10 years' time, we might have a zero carbon electricity grid. Well, if you've got a house that just runs on electricity, by doing nothing, you've actually made your house a net zero carbon home. Well, I wouldn't put that forward as my
solution.
But if you're delivering, using SLC pumps, that's part of the answer. Aligned with that, you've got challenges with interest rates going up. So interest rates are going up, which makes it more difficult for housing associations, local authorities, build-to-rent funds, developers to get finance. And actually, that finance costs more. So one of the ways to save finance costs is to build more quickly. Because you save a significant amount of capitalized interest and actually get your revenue in quicker. So if you're an IRR-driven business, double whammy there. So actually, what we're able to deliver against that. So we can build out more homes more quickly, save you on interest costs, improve your returns on your project. So actually, you can take a project that is not viable and make it viable. That's a really important statement. Then you start to look at some of the skill shortages we've got in the industry. We talked earlier about reduction in the workforce. How the workforce is smaller today than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. Well, actually, we in our factory up in Derbyshire, we currently have about 200 people in that factory. Less than 10% of those, so fewer than 10% of that workforce comes from the construction industry. So we're creating a construction industry product without putting pressure on the construction industry availability of resources. So look, there are so many things that modular is able to do in addressing some of the real challenges we have today.
Yeah, and on the talent one, which is my forte, I suppose, I did loads of talks last year in colleges. One was Derby College, local to you, and they had 10 people turned up. The year before, they had 110 people turn up. So the difference in the years going by of people wanting to do an apprenticeship is getting less and less and less and less. And you don't want to be out in this weather. I'm in Manchester today. It's awful. So, and you mentioned it. So I think this is the big one now is kind of what's the technology that you've managed to implement at TopHat? And I suppose how's that increased the design and the quality of the products? Because it has obviously evolved and got better and better year on year, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, look, and as part of the new investment in the new factory, we're investing in robotics. We've got a number of robots. We are developing new software. We are writing that software. We've written that software. Mm-hmm. The robots are now being tested. The processes are being tested to make sure.
Crazy to hear that.
And that's a different skill set again. So, we do a lot of recruitment, as I'm sure you do. And, I did a piece of recruitment last year. We were looking for someone to come in as a sustainability grad. So someone, looking to come out of university. I think we had over 100 applications for that role. That's really exciting that people want that. At the same time, I think we were looking for a project manager and we got hardly any application. I think we got one application. And it's just showing that there's a real difference now in terms of what people want to be doing, what's important to young people today. So, you're creating those roles. Technology is at the heart of what we do. If you go around our factory, you won't find any drawings. Everything is driven by the design, and that design then drives the robots, drives the machines. That's taking steps forward. So instead of looking for traditional designers or people that can redesign, actually what we're looking for is people that are CAD technicians, people that can write software, people that understand robotics. So it's changing the skill set. And so we're having to work with local colleges in Corby, where we've got a new factory to make sure that we've got the right skill set. We've created our own TopHat Academy to train people up through apprentices. And, it's looking for people with those skills, creating people with those skills because they're not readily available today.
Yeah, and you've hit the nail on the head. We talk about sustainability from the end user perspective, I think, quite a lot. We've got to also remember the next generation of talent coming through. My daughter, kids, anything in the new, they're thinking planet. They're not thinking money. They're not thinking progression. They're thinking planet, sustainability. So actually anything that lends itself to that world, people are going to be more interested in. Like you said, your sustainability grad. And I think if we can start to drive that, we'll see a better influx of next generation of talent into our industry. Otherwise, we'll lose it to technology businesses, green techs, whatever. We'll lose them to other industries.
And we've got a great opportunity because what we do is really quite interesting. We, as I said, we deliver a product that everybody needs. We are naive to think that housing isn't part of the national infrastructure, because everyone needs a home. Everyone in this country needs a home. So it's part of our national infrastructure. We've got a million shortage of homes. So there's a huge pent-up demand for housing in the UK that we are not fulfilling as an industry. So with fewer people coming into that industry, that want and demand growing, you've got a bigger and growing delta between what we're providing and what we need. So we have to do something different.
Yeah, I agree. And what do your customers look like? So if someone's listening to this right now, what is that customer base? Because I presume it's multifaceted in terms of the dynamic.
Yeah, for us, we've got three core markets that we focus on. So the first one is the institutional investors build-to-rent market. They are looking for net zero carbon homes. They are looking for a product that they're going to own for 50 years, that they can own. They will then rent it to local people. Most of them do it on a small A affordable housing type basis. So that's a good proportion of the market we're working with. So I say that's about a third. The next core customer group is housing associations, local authorities. So again, capital A affordable housing. Working with that type of customer that wants to build housing that they're going 50 years, wants to be net zero carbon, that social housing drive. And then the third group actually is the one that, if you'd asked me 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought we'd be working with, is the developers. So working with developers, again, that probably represents about a third of what we're doing. Those are developers that have big sites potentially. They want to try and get some impact. So if you've got 500 or 600 home sites, what they want to do is try and create some early delivery of homes, maybe deliver 100 homes quite quickly. They might be the affordable homes, they might be the build to rent, but working in partnership with them allows us to go and deliver those homes quickly, create the sense of space, create that place, and then allow homes to get delivered quickly after that sort of where they see the more value, which is their private sale.
Yeah. Wow. And I suppose the one thing that we're still challenging here is cost, right? And it's changed, I think, from cost of unit, although that's still really important, to everyone's got rising costs. And obviously procurement in the new MMC world is such an important thing. How have you combated that over the last 12 months? Because clearly we're trying to get the cost of module down whilst the costs are rising and spiraling in another area.
Well, look, cost in the UK is not a binary number. It's not a binary thing. And, you will know that, for example, a bricklayer in London might be £400 a day. That same bricklayer in the Northeast might be £80 to £100 a day. There's a huge delta in labour costs across the UK. Yes. And that actually really reflects in what a customer is able to pay in different regions. So it's fair to say that our model works really well in the Southeast. I mean, here in London today, actually our cost model in London's brilliant because we will always be better and quicker and able to deliver more effectively than traditional here. If I was then, asked, am I going to be sat there delivering schemes in Sunderland on a regular basis? It's going to be very difficult for us because the labour basis and the labour pool is very different. Our cost is the same pretty much wherever we are delivering in the country. Yeah. So there is that delta. I mean, what's been really interesting is as standards have improved. So we've had changes to Part L 21, which came into effect last year. We've got future home standards coming in 2025. That's created a real inflection point where costs of traditional construction have gone up significantly and will go up significantly. And actually, much less so for us. All of our homes already had an air source heat pump, so that was factored into our cost, which is now an additional cost for a traditional conductor. Our homes already had a U value of sub 0.2, which is an additional cost now for traditional contractors. So whilst our product cost has not necessarily increased that much, there has definitely been a cost increase there. So I think for probably about 2/3 of the country, we've hit that inflection point.
Okay, fine. And will we ever catch up to the north? Because, I mean, I've worked with most modular businesses over the last 10 years, and there's not many schemes you see up in the north of England. Can it happen, or is that going to be when we get to a real critical mass of scale?
I think there's two things that drive it. It depends the type of project. So if you are looking at a large build-to-rent, affordable housing type scheme, which is the type of scheme that is IRR driven, yes, I think it can work because that speed is important and that earlier cash coming in is important. So I think you can deliver, in the north where you've got that type of project. So it does work, but you need scale and you need it to be the right type of market. private for sale in the Northeast, very, very difficult. So yeah, I do think it will. Secondly, I think you've got a future where we've still got reducing and diminishing workforce. So I suspect in due course, costs, particularly in that workforce in that region, will go up. So I do think in due course you will get that. And as you've got the material costs in London are no different to the material costs in the Northeast. But as materials costs start to go up, because you've got these additional standards, actually, I think you might start to see a bit more of that inflection in that region.
Yeah, and what role does technology play in that? So if we just, for a minute, park the cost bit and talk about productivity, because it's all aligned, obviously. Where do you think we can get to in terms of productivity? So if we talk about the technology and the implementation of that for your productivity, what's been the increase? And then secondly, what other things can we drive to make that productivity more and more each day?
Okay, so productivity for me is a couple of key areas in what we do. So the first area is within the factory. Actually, how much can we deliver with how many people? So we're building a new factory. We're employing 800, 1,000 people for this new factory. But actually, our output per head will be significantly better than it will be. So over 50% of our manufacturing process will be almost entirely automated. So actually, that's a good place to be. So using robotics, using technology, using clever design to make it more efficient. The second part of that is then actually what do we do on site? How can we be more efficient on site? How can we deliver more effectively on site? And how can we do that? And again, we've made some great strides in improvement in terms of what we do on site to improve that efficiency on site, to improve that. And actually, it's about almost taking the team away from a traditional mindset. So you think about traditional house building, you have the carpenters, you'll have joiners, you'll have door fitters, you'll have kitchen fitters, you'll have plumbers, you'll have electricians, you'll have all of those traditional skills. Actually, in what we do, we need a multi-skilled person who is able to do a bit of each of these things. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's how you'll drive greater efficiency, because you'll have a multi-skilled individual that is able to go in there, is able to do the zip-up detail, is able to do the testing and commissioning, and is able to do lots of different things. And will be more accountable, will be more responsible, can work more effectively. So there are things around that we can do too.
Yeah, fine. And we want to talk about it because it's massive news. This is let's talk about the new factory, because I think it's a game changer. I mean, it's literally a game changer. It's going to triple, quadruple the size of your business over time. So tell us about the reason behind it, which seems obvious, and then what you think it's going to bring for TopHat and your customer base.
Yeah, so look, we've got our first factory, which we will continue to operate. Absolutely, that will be something, that is a long-term part of the TopHat business. And the new factory is about increasing capacity, increasing automation, increasing efficiency in what we do. About a year and a half ago, we saw that the demand was coming. And there's a lot of navel gazing, there's a lot of forward looking with what we do. But one of the skewered benefits of a planning system not working quite as efficiently as it is, we know how many houses we've got in planning currently. We know how many houses we should have planning permission for in a year and a half, 2 years' time. So we've got a really strong pipeline. We've got some great core customers. We've got some frameworks in place with key customers. And we know from that alone that we've got more demand than we have capacity. So that underpins that investment. You then have to go and find a factory. So we were looking for between about 650,000, 700,000 square foot facility. Rarefied air, you're competing with an Amazon and a Ocado. Difficult necessarily to get a landlord to agree to provide you with a facility over one of them. But we went and looked. We went with Savills to go and find ourselves sheds. We looked all across the country. We looked everywhere to find one facility is the right size. And then actually what became really important really quickly was finding facilities with local workforce. We found some great facilities that sat on the edge of the M1, and we thought, brilliant logistics. We can be up and onto the M1, up and down the country, motorway network, no problems whatsoever. And then we started to look at, right, if we need 800,000 people to work there, where are they coming from? And we quickly decided there's no bus. There's no local transport, no local conurbation. So we would have to provide buses to bring people in from local towns, villages, cities, and it just became a logistical nightmare. So what we then started to look at is what is available in terms of great local workforce. Where can we find a facility close to city centres or conurbations? And actually, that's how we ended up working with GLP in Corby, where we've now signed a lease. We're under construction with our new factory, and I think the steel work starts going up next week for that. So the piling's just finished this week.
Wow. And I mean, it's a massive thing for the local area, right? For Corby, just as a place. I mean, that's a lot of employment in one go. What will it take for you to get that fully functional and fully operational? Because that's a lot of people. How do you do that in such quick space of time?
But time is important. So you can never assume you're going to do it on day one. So you have to give yourself time to get up to speed. It is important, and I think if you look back a little bit in Corby in terms of the last 10 years, we had a big steelworks there that closed down. You've actually got major developments. Urban and Civic have a huge 3,500 home development on the side of Corby. There's tens of thousands of new homes being built in Corby. So you've not only got new homes being built, you've got existing homes. You've got, I think the unemployment rate there's about 5 to 6%. So you've got people that want jobs. So you're creating jobs in an area where they're needed, as well as new people moving into the area. So you've got lots of things that you have to factor into. And when we started to look at our facility compared to what a traditional logistics company would have in that site of size, I mean, as I said, we're looking at about 800 to 1,000 people in a facility of that size. The same size logistics business might have a couple of hundred, maybe 300.
Wow.
So it's hugely different in terms of the impact locally.
Yeah, fine. And what's the plan to 800 to 1,000? Sounds like a big headline number. What does that look like in reality in 24, 25, 26? Is there a breakdown, or is it just a case of where demand tells you need it?
It's more the latter. There's a core team that are coming on board already. So there's a core team now. And over the next 12, 15 months, that core team will continue to build. As we get the factory finished, as we start to do all of our testing, we want to have at least sort of 50% of that first shift there, because there's a lot of learning to be done. Yeah. So we don't, again, once the factory is ready, we don't assume that you start production the next day. You've got a lot of time spent testing, prototyping, pre-flighting, what you do in that facility, and then you start to build from there. So, having two factories at that point in time is absolutely essential. You continue to run your first factory, you continue to build your capacity.
Yeah, fine. Okay. And as we go on to the kind of future look now, and a bit of blue sky thinking, really, because no one quite knows what's going to happen in the future, but what would be your absolute moonshot and blue sky thinking for TopHat if you could fast forward 5 years? What would you love to see?
But I think we've got a huge opportunity internationally as well as we have locally. Oh. So, we've got a UK market that is screaming out for better productivity, sustainable product. That is exactly the same as it is across Western Europe. You look at population of Germany. I think I saw something that said population of Germany increased by about 1 million people last year. And there's not nearly enough houses to house that population. France has similar challenges in terms of growing population, real demand for housing. So I see that, you've got an international demand and replicable problems for which the same solution would make sense. So, how that's addressed, how that's going to be set. I think if you start to look at the States, you've got the same challenges. I think if you look at Australia and New Zealand, you've got the same challenges. So, a lot of these developed economies have these exact same problems. In 5 years' time as well, I mean, look, we don't know what's going to happen in Ukraine, but, my God, someone is going to need to work with the population there to help them deliver new homes. If you can build factories locally that allow that workforce to deliver homes locally, again, that's a huge opportunity to create something positive out of what is such as a dark and devastating day today.
No, I agree. And we've got a blueprint for this, right? So, like, if you go over to Japan and Australia and some countries overseas, this is working right now. I read something about Sekisui House back in the day. I know they came into the UK and left, but they've done 1 million modular homes. So the blueprint's there for this.
And one of the things I'm always keen to explore is, as I mentioned before, I've been really lucky to work in different environments in different locations. And, I was lucky enough to work out in Australia, and we were doing modular dongers, as they're called out in Australia, which are mining camps. So you build a mining camp in the middle of the Pilbara where you are shipping modular housing, workers' accommodation to the mining camp, but there's no local workforce. You have to ship everything out, and it's all done modular. There are many different ways of doing things throughout the world, and what works in one location doesn't necessarily work in the other location. So one of the things, yes, secondary we've been doing it, but in Japan people live differently. So what they do is a slightly different thing to here. You've got loads of different, MMC's been around for years, in many different ways. And there's, it's not a one size fits all. Anyone that thinks it's the magic bullet, the panacea, is kidding themselves. But it helps address a problem. It's one answer. So, look, really build 300,000 houses in the UK. You could easily build half of those using modular. The other half, still traditional, that's still there. And we're going to build about 150,000 traditional houses this year. So that really is the right way to look at it. So there are organisations, in Scandinavia, they've been building modular housing for years. They've been doing it in Germany. They've been doing it in Japan. They've been doing it to a lesser extent in Australia. They've been doing a bit of it in the States. It's been around for a very, very long time. What's important now is getting a quality product, a really, really well-refined process, and using the process to deliver a quality product. I think that's where you've got an opportunity for UK to be world global leaders in terms of having really smart products and processes that are able to work locally.
Yeah, I love that. I've never had someone say global, but you never think about it. You just think local, and this will be the market for 10 years. But it's so true. Everyone's got the same problem globally, haven't they? So it's not going to change. We're
not unique. As much as we like to have a good moan about what happens here in the UK, these are not unique problems. If you go and speak to people in France, in Germany, in other sort of Western European countries, housing's a problem, inefficient homes, lack of workforce, too expensive. All of the problems that we addressed earlier are the same problems. If you went to Scandinavia, slightly different. They do this, they use MMC. But again, you look at Norway, for example, at the moment, housing delivery is so expensive, really expensive, because everyone's earning far too much money from oil at the moment. So the cost of getting someone to go and build houses is really high. So each market has its own individual challenges.
Yeah, and as we just finish, the final thing really on the future of modular in the UK. Forget, for a minute, if we don't look at TopHat, what would you love to see for the modular industry and the MMC industry itself in the next 4 or 5 years, or even sooner?
Look, it needs to become an accepted part of the marketplace. It just needs to be a part of the marketplace, not its own niche part, not as we're going to do something different, a prototype doing a few houses. It's just, we're going to do some houses. Oh, and by the way, they're modular. So it needs to become part of the conversation. It needs to be something that people just do without it being riskier or that. The way that we do that is you have established companies. The worst thing is for us would be any of our major competitors to fail. We need them to succeed. We need our customers to have choice. That's a really important part of it. And we need that at different tiers in the market. So we need really good big MMC providers. We need really good middle market providers. And we need really good small providers, because it just then becomes part of the vernacular. It becomes accepted. And for me, that's the absolute driver, because if it becomes more accepted, then the other blockages, things like insurances or latent defect insurance, where people have identified they think this might be a challenge, actually they have to fall in line because it's a market they'd be missing out on otherwise.
Yeah, and a brilliant way to finish. Couldn't have answered that better myself. I think really nice to get you on. Honestly, I think we should come back and do this in a couple of years and see how you're tracking. Good luck with the new factory. It sounds amazing, and I'm loving seeing the success that our modular industry is having. So thank you very much for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.